Hi, my name's Phoebe, author of Honeymooners Forever, 12-Step Marriage Survival Guide. I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of the complicated things that can happen in relationships that I see in relationship therapy with my couples. Certainly, one thing that is not talked about very often but is a very real thing is sex addiction. Now, when I was writing the book, I used to call men who slept around compulsively players or bulls. But in reality, there is a thing called sex addiction, and it's a brain-based issue. So it's basically where the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, there is a disconnect. So when that person gets into the watching porn and certainly looking at chat sites mode, there is a disconnection between their barbaric, primal part of their brain, which is really that part of the brain that you would think an animal would use for chasing and hunting, to eat. And then there's the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that has the logical and moral thinking. So when someone with sex addiction starts getting into that mode of lust and looking at and spending hours and hours doing these things, then they are having that disconnection. So quite often they will have trouble at work, they will have trouble concentrating, they will have trouble with time management, they will have trouble with guilt and shame, and of course they end up quite often having affairs, so that certainly ruins the relationship for that time being, if not permanently. So sex addiction is where someone has an obsession about sex and sexual activities, and it's more than just your average everyday man thinking about it all the time, back to normal, thinking about it, back to normal, and woman thinking about it here and there, back to normal, thinking about it here and there, back to normal. Sex addiction is where someone is compulsive, where someone is prioritizing sexual acts over other things. Now, if you think about the Alcoholics Anonymous program, and the first step, we admitted our lives become unmanageable, and so forth. With the sex addiction, it's very similar to that. And certainly for someone to heal through the sex addiction, and I've certainly helped clients heal, what they need to do first is accept that there's an issue. So there's about 7 questions they need to really ask themselves. I don't have them in front of me, but basically if we will think generally, are you compulsively thinking about sex and sexually related things? Are you telling yourself you're not going to do this or you're not going to do that, or maybe you won't go on porn and you can't stop yourself? Are these things taking over your life like a cancer? Do you find you have obsessive thinking in relation to sex and sexual things? Certainly in your relationship, are you constantly nagging your partner for sexual activities? And do you feel like when it comes to addiction in any form, whether it's drug, alcohol, or sex addiction, there's a big circle which is your life, and hopefully the other circles will be your family, your work, and so forth. But when it comes to an addiction, that addiction takes over. So do you feel like that's how your life is, that it's out of balance? Do you feel a lot of shame and remorse in relation to sexual activities? So you may need some help with sex addiction, which certainly means going to a counsellor or a psychologist who can help you, joining a support group online, and there might be some in America as well, which is great. So obviously with the internet, things are so much easier. But the main thing is really learning about the condition, and certainly on YouTube there'll be more videos you can look at. So that's really just a little bit of a scoop on sex addiction. And I will be talking about more complicated issues that you could experience in your relationship in the next video. Thank you. Have a nice day. Be honeymooners forever.